The silk dress felt like liquid fire against Amara's skin as she stood frozen in the middle of the grand ballroom. 200 pairs of eyes watched her every breath, waiting for her next move. The crystal chandelier above cast harsh light on her face, showing every tear that threatened to fall. Her husband Richard stood 3 feet away, his face twisted with disgust, pointing at the beautiful blue gown he had chosen for her just hours before. "Take it off," he said again, his voice cutting through the sudden silence. The orchestra had stopped playing. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the waiters stopped moving. "You look ridiculous. You're embarrassing our family name." Amara's hands trembled at her sides. The dress was perfect. She knew it was perfect. She had checked herself in the mirror dozens of times before they left their mansion. The deep blue fabric hugged her curves elegantly, the beading catching the light just right. When Richard first saw her tonight, his eyes had lit up with appreciation. He had kissed her cheek and told her she looked stunning. Now he was treating her like she was wearing rags. "Richard, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Can we talk about this privately?" "No." His voice boomed across the ballroom. "I said take it off. Now." The mayor's wife gasped loudly. Someone's wine glass clinked against a table as they set it down too hard. Amara could hear whispers starting from different corners of the room. Her cheeks burned with shame, but something deeper was happening inside her chest. Something was breaking apart, piece by piece. "I don't understand," she said louder this time. "You bought this dress for me. You said you loved it." Richard's business partner, James, stepped forward from the crowd. His face was pale with shock. "Richard, man, what are you doing? This isn't the place for..." "Stay out of this, James." Richard's eyes never left Amara's face. "My wife knows exactly what she did wrong. Don't you, darling?" Amara's mind raced. What had she done wrong? She had been the perfect wife tonight, just like every other night. She had smiled at his business partners, made small talk with their wives, laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. She had been everything he asked her to be. The crowd began to murmur louder. She caught fragments of conversations. "Poor thing. How terrible. I can't believe he's doing this." But she also heard other voices. "She must have done something. There has to be more to this story. Maybe she deserved it." "Richard, I'm begging you," Amara said, her voice cracking. "Please tell me what I did wrong. I'll fix it. Just don't make me do this here." His face softened for just a moment, and she thought maybe he would come to his senses. Maybe he would remember that he loved her. Maybe this was all some terrible mistake or misunderstanding. But then his expression hardened again, colder than before. "You know what you did," he said. "And until you admit it and make it right, you're not worthy of wearing anything I bought for you." The words hit her like physical blows. Not worthy. In front of everyone who mattered in their social circle. In front of his business associates who controlled millions of dollars in contracts. In front of the politicians and society ladies who could destroy someone's reputation with a single whispered rumor. Amara looked around the room one more time. She saw pity in some faces, disgust in others, and cruel entertainment in too many. These people weren't going to help her. They were going to watch her humiliation like it was tonight's entertainment. Her hands moved to the zipper at the back of her dress. The metal felt cold under her fingers. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, drowning out everything else. This was really happening. Her husband of 8 years was making her strip in front of everyone they knew. "Stop." The voice came from behind her. Amara turned to see an elegant woman in a red dress walking toward them. She didn't recognize her at first, but then she realized it was Victoria Sterling, Richard's new client. The woman who had been asking so many questions about their marriage lately. "This has gone far enough," Victoria said, but there was something strange in her voice. Something that didn't match the concern on her face. "Richard, you're making a scene." "This is none of your business, Victoria," Richard snapped. Victoria smiled, and there was something cold about it. "Oh, but it is my business. Isn't it, Richard?" The way she said his name made Amara's stomach drop. There was an intimacy there, a familiarity that shouldn't exist between a client and her husband. Amara watched Richard's face change, watched him glance nervously between her and Victoria. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice was different now. Uncertain. "Of course you do," Victoria said, moving closer to him. "Just like you knew exactly what you were doing when you planned this little show." Planned. The word echoed in Amara's mind. This was planned. The dress, the public humiliation, everything. But why? And what did Victoria have to do with it? The crowd was getting restless. People were starting to move closer, phones were coming out, and Amara realized that in a few minutes, this would be all over social media. Her humiliation would live forever on the internet. She made a decision. Instead of removing the dress, she walked toward the exit. Her heels clicked loudly against the marble floor, each step echoing through the silent ballroom. She held her head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her completely broken. "Amara." Richard called after her. "Don't you dare walk away from me." But she was already gone, pushing through the heavy doors and into the hotel lobby. Behind her, she could hear the crowd exploding into conversation, everyone talking at once about what they had just witnessed. She didn't stop walking until she reached the bathroom. Only then did she allow herself to cry. Amara locked herself in the largest bathroom stall and finally let the tears come. They fell silently, years of suppressed pain pouring out all at once. She had always known Richard was controlling, but this was different. This was cruel in a way she had never experienced before. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. The story was already spreading. She turned off the phone and tried to think clearly. The bathroom door opened and she heard the click of high heels against the tile floor. Multiple women entered, their voices carrying clearly in the echo chamber of the large bathroom. "I can't believe what just happened out there," one woman said. "That poor girl." "Poor girl nothing," another voice replied. "She must have done something terrible to deserve that kind of treatment." But in public? At the charity gala? That was just cruel. Amara stayed perfectly still, listening. "Well, what did you expect?" A third voice joined the conversation and Amara's blood went cold. It was Victoria. "Some women just don't know their place." "What do you mean?" the first woman asked. Victoria laughed and the sound was like ice cracking. "I mean, some wives think they can have everything without earning it. Beautiful dresses, expensive jewelry, social status. They forget that all of that comes with conditions." "You sound like you know something we don't," the second woman said. "Maybe I do," Victoria replied. "Maybe I know that Richard Sterling has been planning tonight for months. Maybe I know that this was just the beginning." Amara pressed her hand against her mouth to keep from gasping out loud. Planning for months. This wasn't a spontaneous moment of anger. This was calculated, deliberate cruelty. "The beginning of what?" the first woman asked. "The beginning of the end," Victoria said. "Some marriages are just mistakes that take too long to correct. Richard is finally correcting his mistake." "You're talking about divorce?" the second woman said. "I'm talking about freedom," Victoria replied. "Freedom from a wife who never appreciated what she had. Freedom from a woman who thought she could coast through life on her looks alone." Amara's hands clenched into fists. She had worked beside Richard for 8 years, helping him build his business from nothing. She had sacrificed her own career dreams to support his ambitions. She had been the perfect corporate wife, attending every function, charming every client, smoothing over every social situation. "But why humiliate her publicly?" the first woman asked. "Why not just ask for a divorce quietly?" Victoria's voice dropped lower, but Amara could still hear every word. "Because Richard needs her to leave on his terms. If she thinks the divorce is her idea, if she's so broken and ashamed that she just wants to disappear, then she won't fight for half of everything he's built." The pieces were falling into place in Amara's mind. The public humiliation wasn't just cruelty. It was strategy. Richard wanted to destroy her self-worth so completely that she would accept whatever divorce settlement he offered just to escape. "That's brilliant," the second woman said, and Amara felt sick. But also terrible. "It's necessary," Victoria said. "Richard has worked too hard to lose half his fortune to someone who never earned it." "And what about you?" the first woman asked. "What's your role in all this?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but clear. "I'm going to be there to help him pick up the pieces. To show him what a real partnership looks like." Amara's heart stopped. Victoria wasn't just Richard's client. She was his mistress. And she had been helping him plan this entire nightmare. "How long has this been going on?" the second woman asked. "Long enough," Victoria said. "Long enough for Richard to realize what he's been missing. What he deserves." The bathroom door opened again and Amara heard more footsteps. "Victoria? Are you in here?" It was Richard's voice calling from the entrance. "Yes, darling," Victoria called back. "Just giving the ladies some perspective on tonight's events." Darling. She called him darling right in front of other people. How long had this been going on? How long had Amara been living a lie? "We should get back to the party," Richard said. "People are asking questions." "Of course they are," Victoria said. Poor Amara made quite a scene with her dramatic exit. They all laughed. Even the other women, who had seemed sympathetic just moments before, joined in the laughter. Amara realized that Victoria had turned the entire conversation around, making her look like the villain in her own story. The footsteps moved away and the bathroom fell silent again. Amara waited another 10 minutes before emerging from the stall. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Her makeup was ruined, her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were red and swollen. But underneath all of that she could see something new. Something that hadn't been there before tonight. Anger. Pure, clean anger that burned away the shame and confusion. Richard had planned this. He had calculated every moment of her humiliation. He had been cheating on her, probably for months, and plotting to steal everything they had built together. She fixed her makeup as best she could and walked back out into the hotel lobby. She could hear the party continuing in the ballroom, but she didn't go back. Instead, she called a taxi and went home to the mansion she had helped Richard buy. Tonight, she had been the victim. Tomorrow, she would start planning her revenge. She had 8 years of marriage to a manipulative man. 8 years of learning how his mind worked, how his business operated, how his social connections functioned. Richard thought he knew her, thought she would just roll over and disappear quietly. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Amara woke up the next morning in the guest bedroom. She had locked the master bedroom door, not wanting to face Richard when he came home drunk and victorious from his successful humiliation campaign. Her phone showed 43 missed calls and over 100 text messages, but she ignored them all. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen island, staring out at the perfectly manicured garden Richard had insisted on hiring professionals to maintain. Everything in their life looked perfect from the outside. Everyone thought they were the ideal couple. The front door opened and Richard's footsteps echoed through the marble entryway. She heard him pause, probably looking for signs of her presence. Then he walked into the kitchen, still wearing his tuxedo from the night before. "Amara," he said, his voice careful and controlled. "We need to talk." She didn't look at him. "Do we? Last night got out of hand. I was stressed about the Peterson contract and I took it out on you. I'm sorry." Now she looked at him. His face was perfectly arranged in an expression of regret, but his eyes were calculating. This was part of the plan too. The fake apology designed to make her feel like maybe it was all a misunderstanding. "You're sorry?" she repeated. "Yes. I should never have put you in that position. It was wrong of me." "Which part was wrong, Richard? Humiliating me in front of 200 people, or getting caught planning it with your girlfriend?" His face went completely still. For a moment, the mask slipped and she could see the real Richard underneath. The cold, calculating man who had been manipulating her for months. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said carefully. "Victoria Sterling," Amara said. "Your client who's actually your mistress. The woman who helped you plan last night's little performance." Richard sat down across from her, his movements slow and deliberate. "You're being paranoid, Amara. The stress of last night is making you imagine things." "Am I?" "Because I heard her talking in the bathroom. I heard her explain the whole plan to her friends. How you needed to break me down so I wouldn't fight for half of everything in the divorce." "That's ridiculous," Richard said, but she could see sweat forming on his forehead. "Victoria is a client, nothing more." Amara stood up and walked to the window. "Prove it." "What?" "Prove it. Show me your phone. Show me your email. Show me your credit card statements. If Victoria is just a client, you won't mind proving it." "I'm not going to be interrogated in my own home," Richard said, standing up. "Especially not by someone who's clearly having some kind of breakdown." There it was. The gaslighting. Making her question her own sanity, her own perceptions. How many times had he done this over the years? How many times had she believed him when he told her she was being crazy or paranoid? "I'm not having a breakdown, Richard. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years." "Fine," he said. "You want to play detective? Go ahead. But you won't find anything because there's nothing to find." He walked out of the kitchen and a few minutes later she heard his car start in the driveway. Good. She needed him gone for what she was about to do. Amara had never snooped through Richard's things before. She had trusted him completely, believed that marriage meant respecting each other's privacy. Now she realized that privacy and secrecy were two very different things. She started with his home office. Richard was organized to a fault, everything filed and labeled and kept in perfect order. She found their joint bank account statements first. Nothing unusual there, just the normal expenses of their lifestyle. But then she found a second set of statements for an account she didn't know existed. An account in Richard's name only, with regular deposits that didn't match his salary from their business. Where was this money coming from? She photographed everything with her phone, then kept searching. In the locked drawer of his desk, she found contracts and legal documents she had never seen before. Consulting agreements with companies she didn't recognize. Payments for services that seemed vague and undefined. And then she found the real treasure, emails printed out and stored in a file folder labeled personal. Richard was old-fashioned about some things, preferring paper copies of important communications. The emails were between Richard and Victoria, dating back almost a year. The early ones were professional, discussing business deals and contracts. But they quickly became personal, then intimate, then explicit. Amara forced herself to read every single one, documenting Richard's lies and betrayal in methodical detail. Victoria wasn't just his mistress. She was his business partner in a series of side deals that were hiding money from their joint company. Richard had been embezzling from their business, moving money through fake consulting contracts to companies that Victoria controlled. He was building a separate fortune, hidden from Amara, while planning to divorce her and leave her with as little as possible. The final email in the folder was dated just 3 days ago. Richard was telling Victoria that the plan was ready to execute. He had found a way to frame Amara for the embezzlement, making it look like she was the one stealing from their company. After the public humiliation broke her spirit, he would have her arrested for theft. Amara sat back in Richard's leather chair, staring at the evidence spread across his desk. He hadn't just planned to humiliate her. He had planned to destroy her completely, leaving her with no money, no reputation, and possibly a criminal record. She took pictures of every document, every email, every bank statement. Then she carefully put everything back exactly where she had found it. Richard couldn't know that she had discovered his plan. Her phone rang. James, Richard's business partner. Amara? I've been trying to reach you all morning. Are you okay? James had been Richard's friend since college and he had always been kind to her. Last night, he had tried to stop Richard's public humiliation. Maybe she could trust him. I'm fine, James. Just dealing with the aftermath of last night. I can't believe Richard did that to you. I mean, I've known him for 20 years and I've never seen him act like that. Maybe you don't know him as well as you think you do, Amara said carefully. What do you mean? She made a decision. Can you meet me for coffee this afternoon? There are some things about the business I need to discuss with you. Things Richard hasn't been telling you. James was quiet for a moment. This sounds serious. It is serious. Very serious. Okay. The cafe on 5th Street at 2 o'clock? I'll be there. After she hung up, Amara went upstairs and showered, washing away the last traces of the previous night's humiliation. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a different woman than the one who had been broken down in that ballroom. This woman was dangerous. James was already waiting when Amara arrived at the cafe. He stood up when he saw her, his face full of concern and confusion. She had chosen a table in the back corner, away from other customers, where they could talk privately. You look better than I expected, James said as she sat down. After last night, I was worried about you. I'm fine, Amara said. Better than fine, actually. I'm clear-headed for the first time in months. James ordered coffee for both of them, then leaned forward. Okay, so what's this about? What hasn't Richard been telling me about the business? Amara pulled out her phone and showed him the first photograph. It was the bank statement for Richard's secret account. Do you recognize this account number? James studied the screen, then shook his head. No. Whose account is this? Richard's. A personal account I didn't know existed until this morning. She scrolled to the next image, showing the regular deposits. These payments have been coming in for almost a year. They don't match his salary from our company. James frowned. Where are they coming from? Consulting contracts with companies controlled by Victoria Sterling. Victoria? James looked confused. But she's just a client. We're handling her real estate investments. She's not just a client, James. She's Richard's mistress and they've been running side deals behind our backs. She showed him more photographs. The emails between Richard and Victoria, the fake consulting agreements, the evidence of money being moved through shell companies. James's face grew paler with each image. This is embezzlement, he said finally. Richard is stealing from our company. It gets worse, Amara said. She showed him the final email, the one detailing Richard's plan to frame her for the theft. He's planning to have me arrested. Last night was just the beginning. James pushed his coffee cup away, his hands shaking slightly. I can't believe this. Richard is my oldest friend. We built this business together from nothing. And now he's stealing from it. From both of us. Both of us. Amara nodded. You're his business partner. When this comes out, if it looks like you knew about it, you'll be implicated too. Your reputation will be destroyed along with mine. James was quiet for a long time, staring at the evidence on her phone. Finally, he looked up at her. What do you want to do about this? I want to stop him before he destroys all of us. But I can't do it alone. What do you need from me? Access to the company's financial records. The real ones, not the version Richard shows me. I need to trace exactly how much money he's stolen and where it's gone. James nodded slowly. I can get you that. But Amara, if we do this, there's no going back. Richard will never forgive either of us. Good, Amara said. I don't want his forgiveness. I want justice. They spent the next hour going through the evidence in detail. James knew the business inside and out, and he could see patterns that Amara had missed. Richard had been clever about hiding the theft, spreading it out over many small transactions instead of taking large sums at once. He's stolen almost $2 million, James said finally. Maybe more. I'll need to do a complete audit to know for sure. Can you do that without him knowing? I'll have to be careful, but yes. I have access to everything as his partner. Amara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She wasn't alone in this anymore. She had an ally, someone who understood the business and could help her build a case against Richard. There's something else, James said. Something I've been wondering about since last night. What? The way Richard humiliated you was so public, so extreme. It felt like he was trying to provoke a specific reaction from you. Amara nodded. He wanted me to be so broken and ashamed that I would agree to whatever divorce terms he offered. But why? I mean, even in a normal divorce, you'd be entitled to half of everything. Why go to such lengths to avoid that? Amara thought about it. Because half of everything would include half of the money he's stolen. If the theft comes out during divorce proceedings, he could face criminal charges. Exactly, James said. So he needs you to disappear quietly without lawyers, without fighting for your share. And if that didn't work, he was planning to frame me for the embezzlement. Make me the criminal instead of him. James shook his head in disgust. I've known Richard for 20 years, and I never thought he was capable of something like this. People show you who they really are when they think they're going to get away with something, Amara said. Richard thought he had me completely fooled. So what's our next move? You give me those financial records. I'm going to start building a case we can take to the authorities. But James, we have to be very careful. Richard can't suspect anything until we're ready to move. What are you going to tell him about today? About meeting with me? Amara smiled, and there was something sharp in the expression. I'm going to tell him that I'm sorry, that I realize I was wrong last night and I want to work on our marriage. I'm going to be the perfect, submissive wife while we gather evidence. You think you can pull that off? After what he did to you? I've been playing the perfect wife for 8 years, James. I can do it for a few more weeks. They agreed to meet again in 3 days, after James had time to go through the company's books. Amara drove home, preparing herself for the performance of her life. When Richard came home that evening, she was waiting in the kitchen with his favorite dinner prepared. She had changed into a simple dress, nothing too fancy or attention-grabbing. She looked like the broken, apologetic wife he expected to see. Richard, she said as he walked in, I'm so sorry about this morning. You were right. The stress of last night made me paranoid and suspicious. His eyes were wary, but she could see relief there too. I'm glad you realized that. I love you, she said, forcing the words out. I don't want to lose our marriage over a misunderstanding. Richard walked over and put his arms around her. She forced herself not to pull away, even though his touch made her skin crawl. I love you too, he said. We're going to get through this together. Liar, she thought. But she smiled and kissed his cheek. I made your favorite dinner, she said. Why don't you sit down and relax? As Richard settled at the table, Amara served him the meal she had poisoned with lies, just like he had been poisoning their marriage for months. But unlike him, she was going to make sure the truth came out in the end. 3 days later, Amara had transformed herself into the perfect picture of a repentant wife. She brought Richard coffee every morning, kissed him goodbye when he left for work, and had dinner waiting when he came home. She asked about his day, laughed at his stories, and never once mentioned Victoria or the events at the gala. Richard was eating it up. His confidence was growing daily, and he was becoming careless with his words and actions. At dinner the night before, he had actually bragged about a consulting deal he was working on, not realizing that Amara now knew exactly what those deals really were. She met James at a different cafe, one across town where they were less likely to be seen by anyone they knew. He had been working late every night, going through years of financial records. "It's worse than we thought," James said, sliding a folder across the table to her. "Richard has stolen over $3 million from the company over the past 2 years." Amara opened the folder and looked at the detailed breakdown James had prepared. "How did I miss this? I handle the books for our side of the business. Because he's been very clever about it. The money doesn't come directly from our main accounts. He's been creating fake expenses, inflated vendor payments, consulting fees for services that were never provided. Then the excess money gets kicked back to his personal accounts through Victoria's companies." "Can we prove it?" "Absolutely. I've documented everything." "But Amara, there's something else you need to know." James looked uncomfortable and Amara felt her stomach drop. "What is it?" "Richard has been preparing to blame you for the theft. He's been creating a paper trail that makes it look like you authorized these payments." He showed her forged documents with her signature on them, approving consulting contracts she had never seen before. "He's been practicing your signature. These are good enough to fool most people." Amara stared at the fake documents. Her own signature, authorizing the theft of millions of dollars. "When is he planning to use these?" "Soon, I think. He's been asking me questions about the audit schedule, when the accountants will next review our books. I think he's planning to discover the theft and blame you for it. And then I get arrested while he plays the heartbroken husband whose wife betrayed him." "Exactly. The public humiliation at the gala was just the setup. This is the real plan." Amara felt a cold rage building in her chest. Richard hadn't just planned to divorce her. He had planned to destroy her completely, leaving her with nothing and facing years in prison for crimes she didn't commit. "We need to move faster," she said. "How long do you think we have?" "Maybe a week. 2 at most. Then we need to be ready to expose him before he can frame me." James nodded. "I've been thinking about that. We need more than just financial records. We need evidence of his relationship with Victoria, proof that they planned this together." "I can get that," Amara said. "Richard thinks I'm completely broken down and submissive. He's getting careless around me." That night, Amara put her plan into action. She knew Richard's habits perfectly after 8 years of marriage. Every Tuesday night, he worked late at the office, claiming he needed quiet time to focus on important projects. She had always believed him. Now she knew he was probably meeting Victoria. She waited until she was sure he was gone, then drove to his office building. She had her own key card. Richard had given it to her years ago so she could access their files when needed. The building was mostly empty at night, just a few cleaning crews and security guards. Richard's office was on the 15th floor. Amara took the elevator up, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She had never done anything like this before, but Richard had turned her into a different person. A person who was willing to fight back. His office was dark, but she could see light coming from under the door of the conference room. She could hear voices, Richard's voice and a woman's voice. "Victoria." Amara pulled out her phone and activated the recording app. Then she crept closer to the conference room door. "Have to move the timeline up," Richard was saying. "Amara is getting suspicious again. This morning she asked me about some consulting payments." "I thought you said she was broken down after the gala," Victoria replied. "You said she would be too ashamed to ask questions." "She was for a few days. But she's starting to bounce back. She's stronger than I expected." Victoria laughed. "Not for much longer. Once she's arrested for embezzlement, she won't be anyone's problem anymore." "When can you have the fake contracts ready?" "They're already ready. Your wife's signature is perfect on all of them. The authorities will have no choice but to believe she authorized the theft." Amara pressed the phone closer to the door, making sure she captured every word. "What about James?" Richard asked. "He's been asking a lot of questions about the books lately. James won't be a problem. Once Amara is arrested, he'll be so focused on damage control that he won't have time to investigate further. And if he does get suspicious, we can always implicate him too. I don't want to destroy James unless we have to. He's been a good friend." "Richard, darling," Victoria's voice was sharp. "You can't afford to be sentimental. We're talking about millions of dollars and our future together. If James becomes a problem, we eliminate him as a problem." Amara heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. Someone was getting up. "I should get home," Richard said. "Amara will be suspicious if I'm out too late." "Poor Amara," Victoria said mockingly. "Living in her perfect little fantasy world, thinking her husband actually loves her." "I did love her once," Richard said quietly. But she became complacent. She stopped trying to be the woman I needed her to be. And now you have me, Victoria said. Someone who actually understands what you deserve. Amara heard the sound of kissing and her stomach turned. She had heard enough. She crept back to the elevator, her phone still recording until she was safely out of the building. In her car she played back the recording. It was perfect. Richard and Victoria discussing the fake contracts, planning to frame her for embezzlement, even talking about destroying James if necessary. This was the evidence she needed. When she got home, Richard's car was already in the driveway. She deleted the recording app from her phone's main screen and hid the file in a secure folder, then went inside. "How was your evening?" Richard asked, looking up from his laptop in the living room. "Quiet," Amara said. "I just watched some television and read a book." "How was work?" "Productive," he said, and she could see the lies in his eyes now. "Just catching up on some paperwork." "I'm going to bed," she said. "Don't stay up too late." "I'll be up soon," he replied, already turning back to his laptop. Amara went upstairs and sent a secure message to James. "Emergency meeting tomorrow. I have everything we need." The next morning she played the recording for James in his car, parked in an empty lot outside the city. His face grew darker with each word. "They're planning to destroy both of us," he said when it finished. "And they're moving faster than we thought." "We need to go to the police today," Amara said, "before Richard can execute his plan." "Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. We can't just walk in with accusations. We need to present this as a complete case." They spent the morning organizing all their evidence. The financial records showing the embezzlement, the fake contracts with Amara's forged signature, the recording of Richard and Victoria planning to frame her, and documentation of Richard's affair. "This is solid," James said. "But we need one more thing. We need to prove that Richard created those fake signatures himself." "How do we do that?" "We need handwriting analysis. But more importantly, we need to catch him in the act of creating more forgeries." Amara thought about it. "I could set up a hidden camera in his home office. He keeps all his personal projects there." "That's risky. If he catches you." "He won't. Richard thinks I'm completely under his control now. He's not being careful around me anymore." That afternoon, while Richard was at a client meeting, Amara installed a tiny camera in his home office. It was disguised as a pen holder, positioned to capture his desk clearly. She also planted a voice recorder behind some books on his shelf. Then she went back to playing the perfect wife, cooking dinner and asking about his day when he came home. "Actually," Richard said as they sat down to eat, "I have some bad news. There might be some irregularities in the company's books. Some money that's gone missing." Amara's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "Missing money? What do you mean?" "It looks like someone has been stealing from us. Moving money through fake consulting contracts." "That's terrible," Amara said. "Do you know who did it?" Richard's eyes were studying her face carefully. "Not yet. But I'm going to find out. James and I are going to do a complete investigation." "I hope you catch whoever did this," Amara said. "They could destroy everything we've worked for." "Don't worry," Richard said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I'll make sure justice is served." The lies came so easily to him. Amara squeezed his hand back and smiled, playing her part perfectly. That night, after Richard went to sleep, she checked the hidden camera on her phone. It had already captured hours of footage. She fast-forwarded through most of it, but then she found what she was looking for. Richard, sitting at his desk, practicing her signature over and over again. Creating new fake documents, backdating contracts, building the case that would send her to prison for his crimes. She had him. Complete, undeniable proof of his guilt. Tomorrow she would take everything to the police. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel the satisfaction of knowing that Richard's plan was about to backfire spectacularly. He thought he was so clever, so far ahead of her. He had no idea that the broken, submissive wife he saw every day was actually a woman preparing to destroy him completely. The next morning, Amara woke up to find Richard's side of the bed empty. She could hear him talking on the phone downstairs, his voice urgent and excited. She crept to the top of the stairs to listen. "Everything is ready," he was saying. "The evidence is perfect. No one will question that she did it. Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" Victoria's voice came through the phone clearly. Richard had put it on speaker. "She has no idea. She's been the perfect little housewife for the past week. Cooking my meals, asking about my day, acting like she's sorry for being suspicious. And you're certain the signatures will pass inspection?" "I've been practicing for months. They're identical to her real signature. Even a handwriting expert would have trouble telling the difference. Amara pulled out her phone and started recording again. More evidence for her case. When do we make the move? Victoria asked. Today. I'm going to call the police this afternoon, tell them I discovered the theft during a routine audit. By tonight, Amara will be in jail. And then what? Then I play the heartbroken husband whose wife betrayed him. I'll get sympathy instead of suspicion. The divorce will be quick and quiet, and no one will question why she gets nothing. What about the money we've stolen? Hidden safely in accounts she doesn't know about. Once the divorce is final, we can disappear together. Maybe Europe, somewhere with better banking laws. Amara had heard enough. She went back to the bedroom and got dressed quickly, her mind racing. Richard was moving today. She had to get to the police first. But when she came downstairs, Richard was waiting for her in the kitchen. His expression was different somehow. Sharper. More focused. "Good morning, darling," he said. "Sleep well?" "Yes," she replied carefully. "You're up early. Big day today. I have some important business to take care of." He walked over to her and she forced herself not to step back. Something had changed. The way he was looking at her was different. "Amara," he said softly, "I want you to know that I'm sorry about everything that's happened between us." "Sorry?" "Sorry that it had to come to this. Sorry that you forced my hand." Her blood went cold. "I don't understand." Richard smiled and there was no warmth in it at all. "Oh, I think you do. You see, I know you've been snooping around, asking James questions, meeting with him in secret." Amara's heart started pounding. "I don't know what you're talking about." "James told me everything," Richard said. "About your little coffee meetings, your wild theories about me and Victoria. He was worried about your mental state, so he came to me for advice." "No, James wouldn't betray her. He couldn't." "You're lying," she said. "Am I? James has been my friend for 20 years, Amara. You've been my wife for 8. Who do you think he's more loyal to?" Richard walked to the kitchen island and picked up a folder. "James gave me this yesterday. All the evidence you two gathered together. Your pathetic attempt to frame me for embezzlement." He opened the folder, and Amara saw her own handwriting. Notes she had made about the financial discrepancies, copies of the documents she had photographed in Richard's office. "The funny thing is," Richard continued, "this actually makes everything easier for me. Now I don't just have evidence that you stole the money. I have evidence that you tried to cover it up by blaming me." Amara backed toward the door. "You're insane if you think anyone will believe this." "Oh, they'll believe it. Especially when they see how unstable you've become since the gala. Having paranoid delusions about your husband, making wild accusations, trying to frame him for your own crimes. James will tell them the truth." Richard laughed. "James will tell them that you approached him with a conspiracy theory, that you seemed mentally unbalanced, that he was concerned enough to bring it to my attention. He's already given a statement to that effect." The room was spinning around her. This couldn't be happening. James had seemed so genuine, so concerned about stopping Richard's plan. "You don't believe me?" Richard pulled out his phone. "Let me call James right now. You can ask him yourself." The phone rang twice before James answered. "Richard? Is everything okay?" "I'm here with Amara," Richard said. "She seems confused about your conversation yesterday. Could you clarify things for her?" "Oh." James's voice was uncomfortable. "Amara, I'm sorry. I know you're going through a difficult time, but I had to tell Richard about your suspicions. You were talking about conspiracy theories, accusing him of embezzlement. I was worried about your mental health." Amara felt like she was falling into a deep hole. "James, you know that's not true. You saw the evidence. You helped me gather it." "Amara," James said gently, "I think you need help. Professional help. The stress of your marriage problems has made you paranoid and delusional." "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't real." Richard ended the call and looked at her with false sympathy. "I know this is hard to accept, darling, but you've been sick for months. The paranoia, the wild accusations, the break from reality. I should have gotten you help sooner." "You're gaslighting me," Amara said. "Both of you. You planned this." "There's no conspiracy, Amara. There's just a sick woman who stole money from her husband's business and then tried to blame him when she got caught." Richard walked to the front door and opened it. 2 police officers were standing on the porch. "Officers," Richard said. "Thank you for coming so quickly. As I explained on the phone, I've discovered that my wife has been embezzling money from our business." "No," Amara said, backing away. "This is all fake. He set this up. He's been planning this for months." One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need you to calm down." "I have evidence," Amara said desperately. "Recordings of him planning this. Financial documents showing what he really did." "Ma'am," the second officer said, "your husband has already provided us with extensive documentation of the theft. We also have statements from his business partner confirming your suspicious behavior." "James is lying. They're both lying." Richard put his arm around her shoulders and she tried to pull away. "Officers, as you can see, my wife is having a mental health crisis. I think she genuinely believes her own delusions. Sir, we'll need you both to come to the station for questioning." "Of course," Richard said. "I want to cooperate fully with your investigation." As they walked toward the police cars, Amara's mind raced desperately. The recordings on her phone. The hidden camera in Richard's office. The evidence was still there. But when she tried to access the files on her phone, they were gone. Deleted. All of them. Richard leaned close to her ear as the officer opened the car door. "I told you I've been planning this for months," he whispered. "Did you really think I didn't know about your little recording sessions? I've been monitoring your phone since the night you visited my office." "You bastard," she whispered back. "I'm not the one who's about to be arrested for embezzlement," he replied with a smile. As the police car pulled away from her house, Amara realized the full scope of Richard's plan. He hadn't just stolen money and framed her for it. He had systematically destroyed every piece of evidence that could clear her name. He had turned her only ally against her. He had even used her own attempts to gather evidence as proof of her guilt and mental instability. She was completely alone, with no proof of her innocence and no one who would believe her. Richard had won. Or so he thought. The holding cell was small and cold, with concrete walls that seemed to close in around Amara as the hours passed. She had been arrested, processed, and charged with embezzling over $3 million from the business she had helped build. The bail hearing wouldn't be until tomorrow, and Richard had made sure to tell the judge that she was a flight risk. But as Amara sat on the hard bench, staring at the fluorescent lights above, she wasn't broken. She was thinking. Richard thought he had planned for everything, but he had made one crucial mistake. He thought she was the same trusting, naive woman he had married 8 years ago. He didn't realize that his months of manipulation and gaslighting had forged her into someone much more dangerous. When the guard brought her dinner, she asked for a phone call. "You already had your one call," the guard said. "I know. I'd like to call my lawyer again." 20 minutes later, she was standing in front of a pay phone, dialing a number she had memorized years ago but never thought she would need. "Harrison and Associates," a crisp voice answered. "I need to speak with Detective Patricia Harrison," Amara said. "Tell her it's about the Sterling embezzlement case." Patricia Harrison had been Amara's roommate in college, before she became a detective specializing in white-collar crime. They had lost touch over the years, but Amara knew Patricia's reputation for taking down corrupt businessmen. Patricia speaking. "Patricia, it's Amara Sterling. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need your help. I've been framed for embezzlement by my husband." There was a long pause. "Amara? I heard about your arrest. The evidence seems pretty solid. Because my husband spent months creating fake evidence while stealing the money himself." "Patricia, I know how this sounds, but you know me. You know I'm not capable of this." "People change, Amara. Marriage, money, pressure, it can make people do things they never thought they would do. Then help me prove my innocence. Look at the case with fresh eyes. If I really did this, the evidence will hold up. But if I didn't..." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "What kind of evidence do you have?" "Nothing that hasn't been destroyed or turned against me." "But Patricia, there are things about this case that don't add up. Questions that need to be asked." Such as why would I steal money and then hide it in accounts my husband controls? Why would I create fake consulting contracts with companies owned by his mistress? Why would I embezzle money and then try to frame my husband for the same crime? His mistress. Victoria Sterling. She's not just his client, she's his partner in this. Both personally and professionally. Can you prove the affair? Not anymore. He's destroyed all the evidence I gathered. But Patricia, affairs leave traces. Hotel records, credit card charges, phone records. You have resources I don't have. Patricia sighed. "Amara, I'm not on this case. It's being handled by Detective Morrison. Morrison is lazy and he's already decided I'm guilty. He's not going to look deeper into this. But you would. I can't just take over another detective's case without cause. Then find cause. Look at the financial records yourself. Talk to the witnesses independently. Patricia, if I'm lying, you'll know within a day. But if I'm telling the truth. If you're telling the truth, then your husband is a sociopath who almost pulled off the perfect crime. Exactly. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Finally she spoke. I'll look into it. Unofficially. But Amara, if I find evidence that you really did this, I won't protect you. I wouldn't want you to. After she hung up, Amara felt hope for the first time since her arrest. Patricia was thorough, relentless, and incorruptible. If anyone could uncover Richard's scheme, it was her. The next morning, Amara was released on bail. Richard was waiting outside the jail with his lawyer, playing the role of the concerned husband perfectly. "Darling," he said, hugging her as news cameras recorded every moment. "I'm so glad you're out. We're going to get you the help you need." "Help?" Amara asked. "Psychological help," Richard's lawyer explained. "We're going to argue that you committed these crimes while suffering from a mental breakdown. It's the best way to minimize your sentence. I'm not pleading guilty to something I didn't do." "Amara," Richard said gently, "the evidence is overwhelming. Fighting this will only make things worse for you." As they drove home, Amara played the part of the defeated wife. But inside she was planning. Richard thought the game was over, but it was just beginning. That afternoon, while Richard was at the office managing the crisis of his wife's arrest, Amara received a call from Patricia. "You were right about the affair," Patricia said without preamble. "Victoria Sterling has been staying at the Grandview Hotel every Tuesday night for the past 6 months. The same nights your husband claimed to be working late. That's something. It's more than something. Hotel security footage shows them together. Multiple times." Amara felt a surge of vindication. "What else did you find?" "The financial trail is interesting. The money from those consulting contracts didn't disappear. It went into investment accounts controlled by shell companies." "Shell companies owned by Victoria?" "Some of them. But here's the thing, those companies were created using your husband's social security number and personal information. He's the beneficial owner of all of them. So he stole the money from our business and hid it in accounts he controls, then tried to make it look like I authorized the theft." "That's what it looks like. But Amara, this is all circumstantial. A good lawyer could argue that you and your husband were working together, and now you're trying to pin everything on him. What would it take to prove he acted alone? We'd need evidence that he forged your signature on those documents. Or evidence that he planned to frame you from the beginning." Amara thought about the hidden camera in Richard's office. He had said he was monitoring her phone, which meant he knew about it. But did he know she had backed up the footage to a cloud storage account he didn't have access to? "Patricia, what if I told you I might have video evidence of him forging my signature? I'd say that would change everything." That night, Amara waited until Richard was asleep, then crept down to the computer in their home office. She logged into the cloud storage account she had set up using an old email address Richard didn't know about. The files were still there. Hours of footage from the hidden camera, including clear video of Richard practicing her signature and creating fake documents. She downloaded everything to a secure drive. She also found backups of the recordings she had made, including the conversation between Richard and Victoria planning to frame her for embezzlement. Richard had thought he was so clever monitoring her phone and deleting her evidence. But he didn't know about her backup systems. The next morning, she met Patricia at a secure location and handed over the drive. "This is everything," Amara said. "Video of him forging my signature, audio of him planning to frame me, evidence of his affair with Victoria." Patricia loaded the files onto her laptop and started reviewing them. Her expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. "This is it," she said finally. "This is enough to arrest him." "When?" "Today. I'm going to take this to the district attorney right now. By tonight, your husband will be in the same jail cell you were in yesterday." As Amara drove home, she felt a satisfaction deeper than anything she had ever experienced. Richard thought he had destroyed her completely. He thought he had planned the perfect crime. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The arrest happened at Richard's office, in front of all his employees and business partners. Amara watched from across the street as Detective Patricia Harrison led him out in handcuffs, his face pale with shock and disbelief. The local news cameras were already there. Patricia had made sure of that. Just like Richard had used public humiliation as a weapon against Amara, now he was experiencing the same treatment. Richard Sterling, prominent businessman and husband of recently accused embezzler Amara Sterling, was arrested today on charges of fraud, embezzlement and conspiracy, the news anchor reported. In a shocking turn of events, authorities now believe that Mr. Sterling was the actual perpetrator of the $3 million theft from his own company. Amara's phone had been ringing all day with calls from reporters, but she ignored them all. She wasn't ready to speak publicly yet. She wanted to wait until Richard was completely finished. Victoria was arrested 2 hours later at her apartment, trying to pack a suitcase. She had clearly gotten word about Richard's arrest and was attempting to flee the city. The police found over $100,000 in cash hidden in her bedroom, along with fake identification documents and plane tickets to Switzerland. James called Amara that evening, his voice shaking with emotion. "Amara, I am so sorry. I can't believe what Richard made me do." "What do you mean made you do?" Amara asked coldly. "He told me that you were having a mental breakdown, that you were making up stories about him to cover your own crimes. He showed me evidence that you had been stealing from the company. Evidence he created. I know that now. But at the time it seemed so real. And he's been my friend for 20 years. I trusted him completely." "You trusted him more than you trusted me." "That's not, yes. Yes, I did. And I was wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong." Amara was quiet for a long moment. James had betrayed her when she needed him most, but she also understood how skilled Richard was at manipulation. "James," she said finally, "Richard cost you $3 million. He stole from your business and tried to destroy your reputation along with mine. Are you going to let him get away with that?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you going to help me make sure he never has the chance to hurt anyone else again?" The next morning, James held a press conference outside the offices of Sterling and Associates. With cameras rolling, he announced that he was changing the name of the company and removing Richard as a partner permanently. "I want to publicly apologize to Amara Sterling," James said, reading from a prepared statement. "She tried to warn me about what was happening and I didn't believe her. My former partner Richard Sterling is a liar, a thief, and a manipulator who fooled me for years." The press conference was covered by every major news outlet in the city. Richard's reputation was being destroyed in real time, just like he had tried to destroy Amara's. But the real satisfaction came when Amara learned about Victoria's reaction to her arrest. According to Patricia, Victoria had immediately tried to make a deal with prosecutors, offering to testify against Richard in exchange for a reduced sentence. "She's giving up everything," Patricia told Amara over coffee. "Bank account numbers, details about their affair, evidence of how they planned to frame you. She's throwing Richard completely under the bus." "And Richard? Richard is still claiming innocence. His lawyer is trying to argue that this is all an elaborate scheme by you and Victoria to frame him." Amara laughed. "That doesn't even make sense. Desperate people make desperate arguments. But with Victoria's testimony and the video evidence you provided, he doesn't have a chance." The trial was set for 6 months later, but Richard's world was already crumbling. His business clients dropped him one by one as the scandal grew. His country club membership was revoked. His wealthy family, who valued reputation above everything else, cut him off completely. Most satisfying of all, his assets were frozen by court order while the investigation continued. The expensive lifestyle he had been living with Victoria came to an abrupt end. Amara, meanwhile, was experiencing the opposite transformation. Once the truth came out, she became a symbol of resilience and justice. Women's magazines wanted to interview her. Business publications wrote articles about her intelligence in gathering evidence against her corrupt husband. She started receiving job offers from companies across the country, all wanting to hire the woman who had outsmarted a sophisticated embezzlement scheme. But the best moment came when Richard's lawyer approached her about a plea deal. "My client is willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for your agreement not to pursue civil damages," the lawyer said. Amara looked at him across the conference table. "Your client stole $3 million from our business, tried to have me imprisoned for his crimes, and planned to abandon me with nothing while he fled the country with his mistress." "Yes, but a lengthy trial would be expensive and emotionally draining for everyone involved. I'm not interested in making this easy for Richard. He didn't make anything easy for me. Mrs. Sterling, please be reasonable. My client is facing serious prison time already. Pursuing civil damages would just be vindictive." "You're right," Amara said, standing up. "It would be vindictive. And I'm looking forward to every moment of it." 3 months later, Richard was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Victoria received 8 years for her cooperation with prosecutors. Both were ordered to pay full restitution, plus damages, plus legal fees. The total amount came to over $8 million. Richard would be in his 60s when he got out of prison with no money, no business, no reputation, and no relationships. He would have to start his life over from nothing, just like he had tried to force Amara to do. The difference was that Amara was innocent and Richard was guilty. Justice, Amara realized, tasted even sweeter than revenge. 2 years after Richard's sentencing, Amara stood in the lobby of her new office building, watching construction workers install the sign that would mark her greatest achievement, Sterling Consulting Group, founded by Amara Sterling. She had kept Richard's last name, not out of sentimentality but as a reminder. Every time someone saw that name, they would remember the story of the woman who had outsmarted her corrupt husband and rebuilt her life from nothing. The business was thriving. Companies across the country hired her to investigate financial irregularities and corporate fraud. She had a team of 12 employees, including 3 former FBI agents and 2 certified public accountants. James had been her first client, hiring her to conduct a complete audit of their former company and implement new security measures. Their working relationship had been awkward at first, both of them carrying guilt and regret about what had happened. But over time they had built a new foundation of mutual respect. "You were right not to trust me," James had told her during one of their meetings. "I let 20 years of friendship cloud my judgment. I should have listened to the evidence instead of my emotions." "We both learned something important," Amara had replied. "The people closest to us are sometimes the most capable of betraying us." Today was special not just because of the new office, but because it marked exactly 2 years since Richard's conviction. Amara had made it a tradition to visit the prison on this anniversary, not to gloat, but to remind herself of how far she had come. The federal correctional facility was a 3-hour drive from the city. Amara made the trip alone, as she always did. She didn't want anyone else to witness this private ritual. Richard looked older than his 45 years when he was brought to the visitor's room. Prison had not been kind to him. His hair was mostly gray now and he had lost significant weight. The arrogant confidence that had once defined him was completely gone. "Hello, Richard," Amara said as he sat down across from her. "Amara." His voice was hoarse, uncertain. "I wasn't sure you would come this year." "I wasn't sure either." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of their shared history filling the space between them. Finally Richard spoke. "I read about your business in the newspaper. You're doing well." "Very well. I'm glad. I know that sounds strange coming from me, but I am glad you found success." Amara studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception. But all she saw was genuine regret and exhaustion. "Why did you do it, Richard? We had a good life together. We were building something real." Richard was quiet for a long time. When he answered, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of getting older. Afraid of becoming ordinary. Afraid that what we had built wasn't enough." He looked up at her. "Victoria made me feel young again. Dangerous. Like I was still capable of taking risks and winning big." "So you risked everything we had built together?" "Yes. And I lost everything." He paused. "But more than that, I lost myself. The man you married wouldn't have done what I did to you. No, he wouldn't have. I know this doesn't mean anything now, but I am truly sorry, Amara. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it." Amara felt something unexpected: closure. For 2 years, she had carried anger and resentment like armor, protecting herself from further betrayal. But looking at Richard now, broken and genuinely remorseful, she realized she didn't need that armor anymore. "I forgive you," she said. Richard's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it for you. I'm saying it for me. I refuse to carry this anger for the rest of my life." "Thank you," Richard whispered. "But Richard," Amara continued, her voice firm, "forgiveness doesn't mean I trust you. It doesn't mean I want you in my life when you get out of prison. It just means I'm choosing to let go of the past so I can move forward." "I understand. I hope you do. Because this is the last time I'm going to visit you. I needed to see for myself that justice had been served, and now I have." As Amara drove back to the city, she felt lighter than she had in years. The anger that had motivated her to rebuild her life was finally gone, replaced by something much more powerful: peace. Her phone rang as she pulled into her office parking garage. It was Patricia Harrison. "Amara, I have news about Victoria." "What kind of news?" "She was released on parole this morning. Good behavior, participation in prison programs, the usual reasons." Amara felt a brief flutter of anxiety, then realized it didn't matter. Victoria was no longer her problem. "Thanks for letting me know. Are you concerned about her trying to contact you?" "No," Amara said, and she meant it. Victoria chose to destroy her life for a man who was using her. That's not my problem to solve. That evening, Amara had dinner with her newest client, the CEO of a tech company who suspected his CFO of embezzling money. As she listened to his story of betrayal and financial manipulation, she realized how much her own experience had prepared her for this work. The hardest part, the CEO was saying, is that I trusted him completely. He was my friend before he was my employee. Trust is necessary for relationships to function, Amara replied. But blind trust is dangerous. There's a difference between trusting someone and verifying that your trust is well placed. How do I learn to do that? You pay attention to actions instead of words. You ask questions when things don't make sense. And you never ignore red flags, no matter how much you want to believe the best about someone. As she spoke, Amara realized she was describing the woman she had become, not the woman she had been during her marriage to Richard. That woman had been trusting to the point of naivety. This woman was wise, careful, and strong. She preferred this version of herself. Walking to her car after dinner, Amara's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything that happened. You didn't deserve what Richard and I did to you. I hope you can find peace. Victoria. Amara deleted the message without responding. Victoria's guilt was not her responsibility to resolve. At home in her new apartment smaller than the mansion she had shared with Richard, but entirely her own, Amara poured herself a glass of wine and stood on her balcony looking out at the city lights. 2 years ago, she had been a woman whose husband tried to destroy her life. Tonight, she was a successful business owner who had built something meaningful from the ashes of that betrayal. Tomorrow she would continue building. Not just her business but her life. And for the first time in years she was excited to see what that life might become. The past was finally where it belonged, behind her. 5 years after Richard's conviction, Amara's consulting firm had grown into a nationally recognized company with offices in 3 cities. She had testified before Congress about corporate fraud prevention, written a best-selling book about financial crimes, and become one of the most sought-after speakers on business ethics in the country. But success in business wasn't the only transformation in her life. She met Dr. Nathan Cross at a conference on white-collar crime prevention. He was a forensic accountant who specialized in helping law enforcement agencies unravel complex financial schemes. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours, covering everything from investigative techniques to their shared love of mystery novels. Unlike her relationship with Richard, which had been built on appearances and social expectations, her connection with Nathan was based on mutual respect, shared interests, and genuine compatibility. He admired her intelligence and strength. She appreciated his integrity and kindness. They had been dating for 2 years now, taking things slowly and building a foundation of trust that had been completely absent from her marriage. Nathan knew her entire story, had seen her at her most vulnerable moments, and had never once tried to diminish her accomplishments or make her feel small. Tonight was the launch party for her company's expansion into the West Coast market. The ballroom of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel was filled with business leaders, government officials, and journalists. It was almost exactly the same venue where Richard had humiliated her 6 years ago, but Amara had chosen it deliberately. She wanted to reclaim this space, to replace the memory of her lowest moment with the celebration of her greatest achievement. Ladies and gentlemen, the Master of Ceremonies announced, please welcome the founder and CEO of Sterling Consulting Group, Amara Sterling. The applause was thunderous as Amara walked to the podium. She wore a stunning black dress that she had chosen herself, paid for with money she had earned, and felt beautiful in because she was surrounded by people who respected and admired her. Thank you all for being here tonight, she began. 6 years ago, I learned that the person I trusted most in the world was betraying me in ways I never could have imagined. That betrayal nearly destroyed me, but it also taught me something valuable about resilience. She looked out at the audience, seeing faces of clients she had helped, employees who believed in her mission, and friends who had supported her journey. We can't control what other people do to us, but we can control how we respond. We can choose to be victims or we can choose to be survivors. We can let betrayal make us bitter, or we can let it make us stronger. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Sterling Consulting Group exists because I chose to fight back against injustice. We help companies and individuals who have been victims of fraud and embezzlement. We give them the tools they need to reclaim their lives and protect themselves from future betrayal. More applause, but Amara held up her hand to continue. But tonight isn't just about business success. It's about the power of transformation. It's about the fact that our worst moments can become the foundation for our greatest achievements. As she spoke, Amara noticed a commotion near the back of the ballroom. Security guards were quietly escorting someone out, trying not to disrupt the event. She caught a glimpse of the person being removed and felt her breath catch. Richard. He was thinner than when she had last seen him in prison 2 years ago, wearing an ill-fitting suit that suggested he was still struggling financially. But what struck her most was the desperation in his eyes as he looked toward the stage toward her. Amara didn't miss a beat in her speech, but her mind was racing. How had he gotten in? What did he want? And why now, at the moment of her greatest triumph? The future of Sterling Consulting Group is bright, she concluded, because we believe that justice and integrity will always prevail over deception and greed. Thank you. The applause was even louder this time, and Amara smiled as she left the stage. But her security team was already waiting for her in the wings. Mrs. Sterling, her head of security said quietly, we removed an uninvited guest. Richard Sterling. He had somehow obtained legitimate identification claiming to be a journalist. Where is he now? Gone. We escorted him from the building and made it clear he's not welcome back. Nathan appeared at her side, his face concerned. Everything okay? Richard was here, Amara said simply. Nathan's expression darkened. Did he try to approach you? No. Security handled it before he got close. Do you want to leave? We can go home if this is too much. Amara looked back toward the ballroom, where her celebration was continuing without interruption. Her employees, clients, and friends were enjoying the evening, celebrating her success, believing in her vision for the future. No, she said firmly. I'm not leaving. This is my night, my achievement, my life. Richard doesn't get to disrupt it. They returned to the party, and Amara spent the next 2 hours accepting congratulations, discussing business opportunities, and enjoying the success she had built from nothing. But in the back of her mind, she wondered what Richard had hoped to accomplish by showing up. She got her answer the next morning. Richard was waiting in the lobby of her office building when she arrived for work. Amara, he said, standing up from a chair near the security desk. Please. I just need 5 minutes. The security guards looked to her for direction. She considered having him removed again, but something in his demeanor made her curious about what he wanted to say. 5 minutes, she told the guards. In the conference room with the door open. They sat across from each other at the polished table where she conducted business meetings with Fortune 500 companies. The contrast between this moment and their last meeting in the prison visiting room was stark. You look good, Richard said. Successful. Happy. I am all of those things. I saw the article in Business Week about your company. You've built something amazing. What do you want, Richard? He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I want to apologize. Really apologize, not the self-serving kind I gave you in prison. You already apologized. No, I asked for your forgiveness because it would make me feel better. This is different. He looked directly at her. I came here to tell you that what I did to you was unforgivable. That you deserved better than what I gave you, not just at the end but throughout our entire marriage. Amara studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation. But all she saw was genuine remorse and the kind of weariness that comes from years of consequence. Okay, she said. I hear you. I also wanted you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something meaningful. Is that all? Richard shook his head. I wanted to ask you something, and I know I have no right to ask it. What? I wanted to ask if there was any way you could help me find work. I've been out of prison for 3 years and no one will hire me. I'm not asking for money or charity. I'm asking for a chance to earn an honest living. The request was so unexpected that Amara sat back in her chair. Richard Sterling, the man who had tried to destroy her life, was asking for her help. You want me to help you find a job. I know how it sounds. But Amara, you know the business world better than anyone. You have connections, influence. If you could just make a phone call, recommend me for something small? Richard, Amara said slowly, you embezzled $3 million from your own company. You tried to have me imprisoned for your crimes. You planned to abandon me with nothing while you fled the country with your mistress. I know. And now you want me to help you rebuild your life. I know I have no right to ask. But I'm desperate, Amara. I've lost everything. I'm living in a studio apartment, working part-time at a grocery store. I can't even afford a decent suit for job interviews. Amara looked at him for a long moment, this man who had once controlled every aspect of her life through manipulation and lies. Now he was powerless, broken, asking for mercy from the woman he had tried to destroy. No, she said finally. Richard's face fell. I understand. I don't think you do. Amara leaned forward. You spent years planning my destruction. You wanted me to be exactly where you are now, desperate, alone, with no resources and no hope. You succeeded in putting me there temporarily. Amara? I'm not finished. The difference between us is that I was innocent. I didn't deserve what you did to me. You, on the other hand, are exactly where you belong. The consequences you're facing are the natural result of your choices. Richard was quiet, absorbing her words. But more than that, Amara continued, helping you would be a betrayal of every client I've served, every victim of fraud who trusted me to fight for justice. How could I help you rebuild your life when I've spent the last 5 years helping people recover from crimes exactly like the ones you committed? I've changed, Richard said quietly. Maybe you have. But change doesn't erase consequences. You made your choices, Richard. Now you get to live with them. Amara stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. I hope you find a way to build an honest life for yourself. But I won't be the one to help you do it. As Richard left the building, Amara felt a deep sense of completion. She had looked her former tormentor in the eye and refused to be manipulated by his desperation. The woman who had once been too trusting to see his lies was now strong enough to recognize his attempts at emotional manipulation. That evening, she had dinner with Nathan at their favorite restaurant. As she told him about the morning's encounter, she realized something important. I don't hate him anymore, she said. But I also don't feel sorry for him. He's facing the consequences of his actions, just like he should be. How does that feel? Nathan asked. Peaceful, Amara said. For the first time since this whole thing started, I feel completely at peace. The next morning brought news that would test that peace. Patricia Harrison called with an update. Richard was arrested again last night, Patricia said. Fraud charges. Apparently, he's been running a small-scale investment scam, targeting elderly victims. Amara felt a mixture of disappointment and vindication. Richard hadn't changed at all. His apology, his request for help, his claims of remorse, it had all been an act, part of another scheme. He came to see me yesterday, Amara told Patricia. He asked for my help finding legitimate work. While he was already running another con, Patricia said. Classic behavior. He was probably hoping you would vouch for his character if anyone started asking questions. How did you catch him? One of his victims was the grandmother of a police officer. When she told her grandson about the investment opportunity Richard was offering, he got suspicious and called us. What's he looking at for sentencing? With his prior conviction, probably another 10 to 15 years. He won't get out until he's in his 70s. After hanging up, Amara sat in her office thinking about the strange coincidence of timing. Richard had approached her for help just as he was committing new crimes, probably hoping to use her reputation to legitimize his latest scheme. The old Amara might have felt guilty for refusing to help him. The new Amara felt proud of herself for recognizing manipulation when she saw it. Her assistant knocked on her door. Mrs. Sterling? Your 3 o'clock appointment is here. Amara looked at her calendar. A new client consultation, a woman whose business partner had been stealing from their company. Another person who needed help recovering from betrayal and rebuilding their life. Send her in, Amara said, smiling. This was her life now, helping people find justice, building something meaningful from the lessons she had learned through her own suffering. As the new client walked into her office, Amara felt grateful for the journey that had brought her here. She had survived the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger than she had ever been. Richard was going back to prison where he belonged. Victoria was struggling to rebuild her life after her own poor choices. And Amara was thriving, surrounded by people who respected her and work that fulfilled her. Justice, she reflected, didn't always happen quickly. But it always happened eventually. The woman across from her desk began telling her story of financial betrayal, and Amara listened with the expertise of someone who had not only survived such an experience, but had transformed it into her life's purpose. Don't worry, Amara told her new client. We're going to get through this together. And when we're done, you're going to be stronger than you ever imagined possible. It was a promise she had learned to keep, first for herself, and now for others who needed the same hope she had once desperately sought. The girl who had been humiliated in a ballroom 6 years ago was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who had turned her greatest defeat into her most powerful weapon against injustice. And that woman was just getting started.